It begins in the shadows, in places where light dares not linger, where the whispers of history have been deliberately silenced. The year is uncertain, the exact dates lost in the labyrinth of time, but the story itself has survived, hidden in cryptic manuscripts, scattered letters, and whispered legends passed down through secretive lines of Templar descendants. This is not the history taught in classrooms or written in widely accepted chronicles. This is something else entirely, something forbidden, a mission so dangerous, so profoundly consequential, that those who orchestrated it ensured that the world would forget. Yet, fragments of it remain, haunting the edges of our understanding, daring the curious to follow where they led. Imagine a group of knights sworn to an ancient order, bound not only by their oaths of martial duty, but by a spiritual mission of untold significance. These were the Templars, a brotherhood revered and feared in equal measure, celebrated for their role in the Crusades and condemned for their supposed heresies. History remembers their power and wealth, the grandeur of their fortresses, and the political intrigues that ultimately led to their violent suppression. But history also forgets, deliberately, the paths they walked in secrecy, the missions that took them beyond ordinary battlefields, beyond the familiar maps of Europe and the Middle East, into realms that may have been forbidden even to the Church itself. It is here, in this hidden domain, that the story of the Forbidden Mission begins. One mission that has been erased, buried, and disguised in layers of allegory, prophecy, and misdirection. Historians may scoff at the idea, labeling it a myth, a fanciful tale concocted by conspiracy theorists or romanticized storytellers. Yet, even among skeptics, there is a persistent sense that something extraordinary occurred, something that could change the very foundations of our understanding of the past. What could have been so threatening, so revolutionary, that the world had to be protected from it? The question itself is enough to send a chill down the spine, a thrill racing through the veins of those willing to listen, to believe, even just a little. The earliest hints of this mission are tantalizingly vague, found in manuscripts that survived the purges of the Templar library. Obscure references to the path of the unseen or the journey beyond the sanctified land suggest a quest not merely for wealth or territory, but for knowledge, perhaps even power, that was considered dangerous, even heretical, by contemporary authorities. Some documents hint at destinations that defy geography. Islands uncharted, deserts unmarked, temples hidden in plain sight, all connected by a trail known only to those brave enough to follow it. Each reference is a fragment, a whisper in the dark, but taken together, they form the outline of a story so compelling, so enigmatic, that it has haunted historians and treasure hunters for centuries. To imagine the mission, picture a night cloaked in mist, a fleet of armored knights moving silently through forests and across rivers, carrying with them relics and scrolls whose significance would be incomprehensible to the uninitiated. They are guided not only by maps, but by cryptic symbols, celestial alignments, and the quiet counsel of sages who understood secrets that the world was not yet ready to receive. Their journey is perilous, not only because of the dangers of the road, but because of the forces seeking to suppress them. Kings, popes, and rival factions watched and waited, eager to snuff out anything that threatened their narrative of history. Every step of this mission had to be concealed, every trace hidden, leaving behind only fragments and rumors. And yet, traces endure. Scattered across centuries, these remnants take many forms. Carvings in stone, faded ink on parchment, architectural anomalies, legends whispered in remote villages. They are faint and elusive, but they persist, like echoes from a past that refuses to remain silent. Scholars have debated their meaning, some dismissing them as coincidence, others suggesting they point to a network of knowledge deliberately protected by the Templars, knowledge that could illuminate truths about the world that conventional history has long ignored. For those who dare to explore these mysteries, each clue becomes a spark, each fragment a thread leading deeper into the labyrinth of secrecy. This is the allure of the Forbidden Mission. It is not just a story of knights and battles, of temples and treasures. It is a story about power, knowledge that could rewrite what we think we know about history, about the Templars themselves, about the forces that have shaped civilizations in ways we are only beginning to understand. And as we begin to follow these hidden trails, it becomes clear that the mission was never about simple conquest or wealth. It was about something far more profound, something so extraordinary that the very act of uncovering it feels dangerous, thrilling, and transformative all at once. Tonight, we step into the shadows of history. We will trace the forbidden path of the Templar mission that has remained hidden for centuries, piecing together fragments, decoding symbols, and questioning everything we thought we knew. Prepare to encounter secret societies, lost maps, and relics whose significance has been deliberately concealed. Prepare to confront mysteries that defy explanation, revelations that challenge mainstream history, and a journey that could change everything we believe about the past. In the end, it is not just a story of knights. It is a story of secrets, of daring, of knowledge so potent that the world itself sought to forget it. And yet, the past has a way of returning, insisting that the curious and the brave bear witness. This is the beginning of that witness. The Forbidden Mission awaits. Long before the whispers of forbidden missions and secret maps, there was the rise of an order whose influence would echo through the centuries, the Knights Templar. Born in the crucible of the Crusades, they were initially tasked with protecting pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, a sacred mission enshrined in both faith and martial honor. But their story quickly became far more than a simple tale of guardianship. It became a saga of ambition, power, and mystery, a story of a brotherhood whose reach extended far beyond the battlefield, whose influence threatened kings, popes, and the very foundations of Christendom itself. The Templars were extraordinary not only for their martial prowess, but for the organization, discipline, and secrecy that defined their order. They established fortified castles across Europe and the Holy Land, each one a fortress of stone and strategy, a sanctuary and a stronghold, a center of both wealth and knowledge. Within these walls, records were kept, treasures were stored, and secrets were whispered only among the brotherhood. They were bankers before banking existed, financiers who moved gold across continents, and strategists who understood that power was not only in the sword but in the ledger, in the network of influence that spanned kingdoms and empires. Yet, this extraordinary rise inevitably attracted suspicion and fear. The church and the crown watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. How could a group of knights, ostensibly sworn to faith, accumulate such wealth and wield such influence without consequence? And then there were the rumors, dark and persistent, tales of secret rites, of hidden knowledge, of practices and ceremonies that only the initiated could witness. To the outside world, these rumors were frightening. To some, they were evidence of heresy. But to the Templars, secrecy was not simply a matter of self-preservation. It was a necessity. Their world was not a place for openness. It was a world where knowledge was power, and power needed protection. The suppression of the Templars did not come overnight. It was the culmination of years of political maneuvering, envy, and fear. In 1307, King Philip IV of France, deeply indebted to the order and wary of their growing independence, orchestrated a series of arrests, accusations, and trials. The charges were severe: heresy, idolatry, and corruption. The methods were brutal, often relying on torture and coerced confessions. And yet, despite the trials and executions, the Templars did not vanish entirely. Their disappearance from official records was deliberate, orchestrated, and in many ways incomplete. Pockets of the order, fragments of its knowledge, and whispers of its secrets survived, hidden in plain sight or carried away by those clever enough to elude capture. It is precisely in this shadow between history and legend that the Forbidden Mission exists. For while the public eye saw the fall of the Templars as final, the truth was more complex, more clandestine. The brothers who survived were not simply fugitives. They were guardians of knowledge, custodians of secrets so powerful that revealing them could alter the course of nations. And some of these surviving Templars, scholars suggest, embarked on missions so dangerous, so transformative, that the church and state could not allow them to be documented. To understand the mission, one must first understand the environment from which it emerged. The Templars were not ordinary knights. They were strategists, scholars, explorers, and visionaries. Their operations spanned continents. Their intelligence network stretched further than any medieval king could imagine, and their ambition was not merely martial or financial, but spiritual, cosmological, even prophetic. Every fortress they built, every ledger they maintained, every cryptic symbol they inscribed carried a purpose, a clue, or protection. The mission we will follow emerges from this intricate web of secrecy, ambition, and foresight. Even more intriguing is the idea that the Templars, before their suppression, had already begun to anticipate the threats they would face. Perhaps they foresaw the political machinations that would seek to dismantle them, or perhaps they had received intelligence of the dangers that awaited their forbidden mission. Whatever the case, it is clear that the Templars prepared for a journey beyond the reach of conventional history, a mission that would survive only in fragments and whispers, awaiting those with the curiosity and courage to follow its trail. And so, as we step closer to the heart of the Forbidden Mission, we must carry with us the understanding of the Templars' world, a world of wealth, secrecy, and influence, a world where power and knowledge were intertwined, and where every action had consequences far beyond the battlefield. This is the soil from which the Forbidden Mission sprouted, a mission that would take the surviving Templars into realms that defied both geography and conventional history, into territories where only the brave or the desperate dared to venture. History remembers the Templars' fall. It celebrates their martial deeds, their castles, their wealth. But it forgets, or chooses to forget, the hidden paths they walked, the secret missions they undertook, and the knowledge they carried into shadows where no chronicler dared follow. And it is precisely in these shadows that our journey begins, tracing the forbidden mission that could change everything. Amid the grandeur and secrecy of the Templar Order, there arose whispers of a mission unlike any other, a journey so forbidden, so carefully concealed, that its very existence was almost impossible to prove. Unlike their public campaigns in the Holy Land or their renowned battles against rival forces, this mission was shrouded in layers of secrecy, hidden behind codes, symbols, and a veil of deliberate erasure from history. It was not recorded in the official annals of the Church, nor mentioned in the Chronicles of Kings. Yet for those who study the fragments left behind, for those who dare to decipher the faint traces in manuscripts and letters, a tantalizing story begins to emerge, one that could change everything we thought we knew about the Templars. The earliest hints of this secret mission appear in obscure texts scattered across European libraries and private collections. These references are cryptic, often nothing more than marginal notes, enigmatic symbols, or brief mentions that seem almost accidental. The path of the unseen, the journey beyond the sanctified lands, the treasure that must not be found. Phrases like these suggest a deliberate effort to conceal the mission's purpose, its destinations, and even the identities of those involved. Scholars have debated their meaning for centuries, yet no consensus has been reached, leaving the mission suspended between history and myth, fact and speculation. It is the nature of secrecy itself that makes the mission so compelling. Unlike conventional military campaigns, where victories and losses are recorded and celebrated, a forbidden mission is designed to leave no trace. Every step must be calculated, every move orchestrated to avoid detection. Yet even in the shadows, evidence has a way of surfacing. The Templars, masters of strategy and subterfuge, left clues deliberately, not for the uninitiated, but for those with the knowledge, patience, and curiosity to uncover them. Each fragment of information, each cryptic reference, forms part of a complex puzzle, a roadmap that only the determined could hope to piece together. The nature of the mission itself remains elusive. Some historians speculate it was a quest for lost knowledge, manuscripts, relics, or artifacts so powerful they could threaten established authority. Others suggest a more spiritual or cosmological purpose, a journey intended to uncover hidden truths about the universe, sacred geometry, or divine wisdom. There are even theories that the mission involved alliances with secret societies or distant civilizations, networks that extended far beyond Europe and the Middle East. Whatever the case, the mission was never meant to be understood by outsiders. It was, in every sense, forbidden. The secrecy surrounding the mission was enforced with ruthless precision. Templar knights assigned to this journey were sworn to silence under the gravest oaths, their loyalty tested in ways that would be unimaginable to most. Some legends speak of elaborate initiation rituals designed to bind the knights spiritually and psychologically to the mission's purpose. Others hint at hidden compartments within Templar castles, secret chambers where maps, relics, and instructions were stored for those chosen to carry them forward. Every precaution was taken to ensure that the mission could survive the scrutiny of kings, popes, and inquisitors alike. Yet, despite these efforts, traces remain. Manuscripts discovered in the quiet corners of monasteries, maps with seemingly impossible annotations, and letters encoded with ciphers all suggest a carefully orchestrated operation. The thrill of uncovering these remnants lies not only in what they reveal, but in what they conceal, the deliberate gaps, the silences, the questions left unanswered. Each fragment is a lure, drawing the curious deeper into the labyrinth of history, teasing the possibility of a revelation that mainstream chronicles have denied. It is also worth noting the human element, the courage, intelligence, and vision of those chosen for the mission. These were not ordinary knights following orders blindly. They were scholars, strategists, explorers, and perhaps even mystics, each entrusted with a piece of knowledge too dangerous for the uninitiated. Their journey was not merely physical. It was intellectual and spiritual, requiring insight, intuition, and unwavering resolve. To undertake such a mission was to step into a world of uncertainty and danger, knowing that failure could mean not only personal annihilation, but the permanent loss of secrets too potent for the world to bear. Over the centuries, the Forbidden Mission has inspired countless theories, many of them contradictory, some fantastical. Was it a search for a sacred relic, a lost city, or a hidden text that predated known civilizations? Did it involve contact with distant cultures, advanced knowledge, or forbidden sciences? Each theory, while speculative, is anchored by fragments of evidence: the scattered notes, the symbolic carvings, the maps with hidden coordinates. It is the interplay between these hints and the voids they leave behind that creates the mission's enduring fascination. What makes this story particularly compelling is the contrast between what is known and what has been deliberately hidden. While the public narrative of the Templars is one of glory, wealth, and downfall, the Forbidden Mission represents a shadow history, a parallel path that challenges conventional understanding. It is a story not only of knights and battles, but of knowledge so potent, so transformative, that its concealment was deemed necessary. And as we follow the traces of this mission, we are drawn into a narrative that blurs the lines between legend and history, secrecy and revelation, danger and discovery. Tonight, we begin to trace the path of this secret mission, piecing together clues left in manuscripts, maps, and legends. We will follow the knights as they move through the shadows, guided by wisdom, faith, and a purpose so compelling that they risked everything to see it fulfilled. The Forbidden Mission is no longer just a whisper from the past. It is a trail that leads us into hidden corridors of history, into mysteries that challenge what we believe and compel us to look deeper, beyond the official record, into the shadows where truth has been deliberately obscured. And so, the story emerges, a mission forbidden, a path hidden, a journey that could change everything. The Templars left their mark, not only in stone and parchment, but in the very fabric of history's hidden corridors. And for those willing to follow, the Forbidden Mission begins here, in the quiet spaces between fact and legend, where only the brave dare to tread. Maps are more than tools. They are keys, gateways into hidden worlds, reflections of knowledge and power. In the hands of the Templars, they were instruments of secrecy and strategy. Ordinary maps of the medieval era depicted cities, rivers, and borders, but the maps associated with the Forbidden Mission were something else entirely. They were cryptic, encoded, layered with symbols and annotations that only the initiated could decipher. Some suggested routes across familiar lands, yet included markings that defied geography, pointing to hidden locations, forgotten paths, or territories that seemed to exist only in myth. These maps were the silent guides for a journey that had to remain invisible to the outside world, the invisible thread connecting the knights to destinations so secret that history itself was instructed to forget them. The Templars were meticulous in their cartography. Their maps were not only accurate, but intentionally enigmatic. Certain symbols, circles, triangles, stars, and glyphs appeared repeatedly, hinting at sacred sites, astronomical alignments, or hidden treasures. Marginal notes, often written in code or obscure languages, instructed the reader not merely where to go, but how to read the land, how to observe the heavens, and how to recognize the signs left by others who had walked these paths before. Scholars who have examined these remnants are often struck by their precision, but also by the deliberate obscurity. It was as though the maps were designed to reveal their secrets only to those prepared to see beyond the obvious. One particularly compelling example is a fragmented map held in a private European archive, its edges burned, the center nearly illegible, yet traces of lines and symbols remain. It depicts a route across Europe, but along its path are strange annotations, references to the Silent Valley, the island of hidden wisdom, and the place where stone speaks. Historians who study the fragment disagree on its meaning. Some suggest it refers to literal locations lost to time. Others propose symbolic or spiritual interpretations. What is certain, however, is that these markings were deliberate, intentional, and meant to obscure as much as they reveal. Cryptic clues were not confined to maps alone. They appeared in manuscripts, inscriptions, and even architecture, woven throughout Europe and the Holy Land like breadcrumbs for the initiated. A cathedral doorway, a carved stone in a forgotten chapel, or a marginal note in a manuscript might all carry the same symbol found on a map, suggesting continuity, coherence, and an intricate system of knowledge. The Templars were masterful in their ability to embed secrets in plain sight, leaving signs for those who knew how to read them, while remaining invisible to the untrained eye. In many cases, these clues were deliberately deceptive, meant to mislead and protect the mission from prying eyes. The sophistication of Templar cryptography further amplified the challenge. Codes, ciphers, and symbolic languages were used extensively. Simple letters might conceal entire instructions. A pattern of dots could indicate direction. A constellation drawn in the margin could correspond to a specific location or time. Decoding these messages requires not only linguistic skill, but intuition, knowledge of astronomy, and an understanding of the Templar worldview. For centuries, these codes were considered indecipherable or dismissed as meaningless embellishments. Yet modern scholars and cryptographers have uncovered patterns that suggest a deliberate intelligence, a methodical approach to conveying information that had to remain secret at all costs. Maps and cryptic clues served multiple purposes. First, they guided the knights along the Forbidden Mission's path, ensuring that those entrusted with its execution could navigate unknown lands safely and successfully. Second, they acted as a safeguard, a way to ensure the continuity of knowledge, even if certain operatives were captured or killed. The Templars understood the fragility of their existence. By encoding information in maps and symbols, they ensured that the mission could survive beyond the lifetime of any individual. Third, and perhaps most intriguingly, they created a narrative of secrecy that would persist for centuries, a story embedded in stone, parchment, and memory, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond conventional history. Some of the maps even hint at destinations that defy explanation. Islands that do not appear on any contemporary charts, hidden valleys obscured by mountains, and labyrinthine routes that seem designed to confuse outsiders. Certain maps incorporate astronomical elements, lines connecting stars, annotations tied to lunar cycles, or references to celestial phenomena. Scholars suggest these might have been used to time movements, align with sacred events, or indicate locations based on celestial observation. The integration of astronomy into cartography reflects not only the Templars' practical ingenuity, but their belief in a higher order, a universe where knowledge of the heavens guided human endeavor. And yet, for all their precision, the maps carry an aura of mystery. They are not straightforward guides, but puzzles, challenges, and warnings. Some include red herrings, false paths, and intentionally misleading markers. Others may encode philosophical or spiritual principles, hinting at lessons to be learned as much as routes to be followed. In this way, the maps are both literal and symbolic, serving as instruments of navigation, protection, and initiation. To follow them is to participate in the mission on multiple levels, physically, mentally, and spiritually. The enduring allure of these forbidden maps lies in their duality. They are both guides and guardians. They provide direction, yet obscure meaning. They preserve knowledge, yet challenge comprehension. For centuries, explorers, historians, and treasure hunters have sought them, uncovering fragments and clues, yet always encountering gaps and silences that defy explanation. It is in these silences, in the spaces between lines and symbols, that the true mystery of the Templar mission resides. As we continue to trace the forbidden path, these maps and cryptic clues become more than historical artifacts. They are keys to understanding the mission itself. They suggest not only where the Templars traveled, but why they traveled, and what they sought to protect or uncover. Following them is not merely an exercise in geography. It is a journey into the mindset, vision, and secret intelligence of an order that operated in shadows, guided by knowledge too dangerous for the world to see. In the end, the maps whisper to us across centuries, urging the curious to decode their secrets, to follow their hidden trails, and to confront the enigmas that the Templars went to extraordinary lengths to conceal. And as we prepare to uncover the next layers of the Forbidden Mission, these cryptic guides stand as our first gateway, revealing paths that were deliberately hidden and mysteries that have waited patiently for centuries to be discovered. As the Templars' Forbidden Mission unfolded, it became clear that its protection and continuation could not rely solely on the knights themselves. The Order had cultivated connections beyond the battlefield, networks so subtle and pervasive that they intertwined with the hidden currents of European and even global power. Some of these connections evolved into what we now call secret societies and hidden orders, organizations that claimed no public allegiance yet wielded influence in quiet, sometimes invisible ways. These societies became the custodians, interpreters, and, in some cases, the executors of the Templars' most guarded knowledge. Among the most famous of these groups are the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and a myriad of lesser-known cabals whose existence is often shrouded in rumor and legend. While the precise links to the Templars remain debated among historians, multiple strands of evidence suggest that the fall of the Templar Order did not mark the end of their mission. Members dispersed, integrating into these societies, carrying with them maps, artifacts, and the esoteric wisdom that the Church and kings sought to suppress. These hidden orders offered continuity, a secret infrastructure through which the mission could survive beyond the public eye. The Freemasons, in particular, are frequently cited as inheritors of Templar knowledge. Their symbols, rituals, and hierarchical structures bear echoes of the older order, from the use of geometric designs to coded oaths of secrecy. Some scholars suggest that the Freemasons were less a new society and more a vessel, preserving the Templars' most sensitive knowledge under a different name. Similarly, the Rosicrucians, with their emphasis on mystical understanding and esoteric wisdom, may have absorbed the spiritual dimensions of the mission, safeguarding insights that bridge science, philosophy, and theology. These connections were not coincidental. They were deliberate, carefully orchestrated by Templar survivors seeking to protect what they had discovered. Beyond Europe, whispers of Templar influence appear in more enigmatic contexts. Certain orders reportedly operated in secret courts, monasteries, and remote enclaves, often aligning with scholars, astronomers, and navigators who could interpret the Forbidden Mission's more technical aspects. These hidden alliances were crucial, for the mission itself was not merely a matter of physical travel, but of decoding knowledge that spanned continents, civilizations, and generations. It was a network of minds as much as it was a path across land and sea, a living map maintained in secrecy, passed from one adept to another, often in symbolic form that only initiates could understand. The nature of these societies also reflects the Templars' understanding of power. True influence, they realized, was rarely wielded openly. Kings and popes could command armies, but knowledge and the ability to hide, interpret, and control it was far more enduring. The Templars' integration into hidden orders ensured that their discoveries, the artifacts they protected, and the wisdom they possessed would remain shielded from political purges and ecclesiastical scrutiny. In effect, these societies became guardians not only of physical objects, but of ideas and principles too dangerous for public disclosure. Evidence of these connections comes in subtle forms. Architectural motifs, cryptic inscriptions, and ceremonial objects all point toward a lineage of secrecy linking the Templars to later orders. Certain Masonic lodges display symbols resembling those found in Templar manuscripts, while Rosicrucian texts occasionally echo the phrasing and allegorical style of lost Templar scrolls. Even distant legends preserve in oral traditions of isolated villages, recount encounters with enigmatic knights or mystics who imparted wisdom in cryptic riddles, only to vanish without explanation. Each of these fragments hints at an invisible web of continuity, a secret infrastructure designed to preserve the mission across time and space. It is essential to understand that these societies were not merely passive custodians. In many cases, they actively participated in the mission's objectives, interpreting maps, following encoded instructions, and safeguarding treasures or manuscripts. They operated in silence, weaving their influence through courts, universities, monasteries, and even trade networks, ensuring that the mission could advance while remaining invisible to those who would seek to suppress it. The Templars understood that the survival of knowledge required both guardianship and discretion, a delicate balance maintained by those who knew how to move unseen in the shadows of history. There is also the matter of allegiances. Some orders may have been complicit in deliberate misdirection, planting false clues or misleading symbols to protect the true paths and locations. In this way, the mission itself became layered with deception, a labyrinth of hidden knowledge designed to test the discernment of any who dared to follow it. Only those with insight, patience, and intuition could hope to navigate these layers, unraveling the threads of the mission while avoiding the traps set to deter casual seekers or adversaries. Modern fascination with secret societies often obscures their historical significance. Popular culture paints them as conspiratorial cabals, but the evidence suggests something more nuanced. These groups were custodians, interpreters, and sometimes executors of knowledge too powerful for mainstream understanding. By tracing their symbols, rituals, and networks, we gain insight into how the Templars' forbidden mission continued long after the order itself was dismantled. The societies acted as both vaults and conduits, ensuring that the mission's secrets would survive, concealed yet enduring, waiting for those equipped to uncover them. As we explore the artifacts, maps, and codes, the role of these hidden orders becomes increasingly apparent. They were not peripheral participants, but integral to the mission's very survival. Through them, the Templars' legacy endured, moving beyond the battlefield, beyond the scrutiny of kings and popes, into a realm where knowledge, strategy, and discretion govern the fate of the mission. Understanding their role is essential for piecing together the full scope of the Forbidden Journey, a journey that intertwined bravery, intellect, and secrecy in equal measure. The Forbidden Mission, therefore, is not just a story of knights on horseback or treasures buried in stone. It is a story of networks, alliances, and invisible guardianship of societies that operated beyond the reach of conventional history. Through these hidden orders, the mission's wisdom, artifacts, and purpose were preserved, encoded, and carried forward into centuries yet to come. And as we continue to follow the trail, tracing maps, relics, and symbols, we begin to see the mission in its full complexity, a web of secrecy, strategy, and insight, guided by minds as sharp as any sword and as cautious as the shadows in which they moved. Among the scattered relics and encrypted manuscripts of the Templars lies something far more elusive than gold or stone: prophecy. Not prophecy in the simple, superstitious sense, but a fusion of mysticism, astronomy, and coded foresight. For the Templars, knowledge of the past was incomplete without an understanding of what was to come. Their forbidden mission, some say, was driven not merely by discovery, but by the anticipation of events yet to unfold, an ancient warning inscribed in sacred texts and whispered through generations of initiates. According to fragments recovered from monastic vaults and esoteric manuscripts, the Templars believed that certain relics carried encoded knowledge about humanity's cycles of rise and collapse. These relics, imbued with symbols and geometric alignments, were thought to reveal cosmic patterns, signs that civilizations had risen and fallen according to forces written in the stars. The Templars, unlike most of their contemporaries, sought to interpret these celestial rhythms as messages rather than mysteries. To them, the stars were not distant lights, but divine instruments, marking epochs of transformation and warning of impending collapse. One particular fragment, attributed to a lost codex of Solomon's temple, speaks of a great veil, a time when the truth would be buried beneath centuries of ignorance, and only those who held the symbols of light and stone could pierce it. The passage is cryptic, but its imagery is consistent with other Templar writings that blend scriptural prophecy with astronomical observation. The veil may have represented an age of spiritual blindness, a period when humanity would forget its origins, its purpose, and the sacred balance between knowledge and power. The Templars saw themselves as guardians prepared to preserve fragments of truth through this darkness, ensuring its eventual rediscovery when the world was ready to understand. There are hints that their mission extended beyond simple preservation. Some interpretations suggest that the Templars possessed knowledge of cyclical cataclysms, natural or cosmic events that reshaped civilization. These were not apocalyptic fantasies, but careful observations drawn from ancient records and celestial alignments. They believed that the past held the blueprint of the future, and that by decoding these cycles, one could foresee and perhaps survive what others would call fate. The Forbidden Mission, in this light, was not just about protecting sacred objects, but about safeguarding humanity's memory of itself. The concept of prophecy within the Templar order often merged with mathematical precision. Their architects and scholars studied sacred geometry not merely as an art form, but as a universal language, a code that connected the heavens with the earth. Every cathedral, every map, and every relic was crafted according to proportions that mirrored the movements of celestial bodies. To them, prophecy was not dictated by divine whim, but by patterns, predictable, measurable, and decipherable by those with the right knowledge. Through geometry, they saw the hand of creation and the rhythms of time, and through symbols, they encoded messages meant for future generations. There are also legends of a manuscript, the Book of Shadows and Light, rumored to contain a timeline of future ages, written in allegorical form. Its existence has never been verified, but references to it appear in scattered Templar letters and later Masonic writings. It was said to predict not only the fall of kingdoms, but the rebirth of hidden wisdom, the rise of empires, and the eventual return of a lost order of enlightenment. To some, this was mere metaphor. To others, it was evidence of foresight beyond what medieval minds could have achieved without access to knowledge from far older civilizations. The Templars' fascination with prophecy also drew them toward ancient traditions predating Christianity, Babylonian, Egyptian, and even Celtic systems of divination and astronomy. They sought to merge these with their own theological framework, believing that truth was universal and could be found in the convergence of faith and observation. This synthesis produced what they called the Lumen Arcana, the hidden light, a doctrine suggesting that divine knowledge was scattered across cultures and ages like shards of a shattered mirror. To piece it together required humility, patience, and above all, secrecy. Those entrusted with this hidden knowledge were often bound by silence under threat of death. The Church viewed prophecy that lay outside scriptural interpretation as heresy. Yet the Templars persisted, disguising their studies in allegories and architectural symbolism. Some of their cathedrals, particularly those built after the Second Crusade, exhibit alignments with solstices, star constellations, and planetary cycles, subtle reminders of their cosmic awareness. In the carvings of saints and angels, in the placement of windows and the angles of light, they encoded the same prophecies they dared not speak aloud. The deeper implication of these prophecies was unsettling. That history itself might be cyclical, that power and ignorance rotate like the stars, and that each age is both a repetition and an evolution of what came before. To the Templars, this meant that their mission could not end with them. They were merely one link in an unbroken chain of guardianship stretching backward into forgotten epochs and forward into futures they could only glimpse. Their forbidden knowledge suggested that the world would one day forget its connection to the divine order, and that when that time came, the rediscovery of hidden truths would signal a great reckoning. Some modern researchers, analyzing encoded manuscripts and architectural patterns, argue that the Templars may have predicted events centuries beyond their time. The fall of monarchies, the rediscovery of lost lands, even the Age of Enlightenment. While such claims remain speculative, the consistency of their symbolism across generations implies an organized transmission of knowledge. Whether or not the prophecies were literal, their influence shaped the actions of those who followed, guiding explorers, philosophers, and mystics who believed they were fulfilling the next phase of the mission. In the quiet halls of secret lodges and the echoing vaults of ancient cathedrals, whispers of these prophecies persist. Some believe that the Templars foresaw not only the decay of old powers, but the rise of a new era, one where hidden knowledge would resurface, transforming humanity's understanding of itself. Others interpret the prophecies as warnings, cautioning against the misuse of sacred wisdom in the pursuit of domination or technology unchecked by morality. Whatever the truth, the enduring fascination with Templar prophecy speaks to something deeper. The human desire to find order in chaos, to believe that history has purpose, and that knowledge, once buried, will one day return to light. As we continue following the thread of the Forbidden Mission, the Templars' prophecies and hidden knowledge reveal an unsettling idea. Perhaps their journey was never meant to end in the Middle Ages at all. Perhaps it was meant to reach us, a message encrypted in time itself, waiting for those who dare to listen between the lines of history and rediscover what was deliberately hidden beneath centuries of silence. If the Templars' prophecies revealed what was to come, their maps revealed where the truth had been buried. But these were not ordinary maps, not the simple parchment drawings of coastlines or kingdoms. They were encrypted diagrams of the world, woven with sacred geometry, celestial alignments, and symbols whose meanings could only be understood by those initiated into the deepest layers of the Order's mysteries. To the untrained eye, these maps appeared decorative, abstract, or even nonsensical. But to a Templar adept, they were keys, intricate schematics linking the earth to the heavens, revealing hidden routes, sacred sites, and places of immense power. Sacred geometry was the foundation of this hidden cartography. Every line, angle, and proportion reflected the belief that creation itself was structured by divine mathematics. The Templars viewed the world as a living reflection of cosmic order, a map not merely of geography, but of consciousness. To trace these lines was to understand how divine energy flowed through the earth, concentrated in certain places. Mountaintops, ancient temples, stone circles, and cathedrals built upon older pagan sites. The coded maps were designed to mark these power points, forming a global network that mirrored the constellations above. According to accounts from later centuries, some of these maps were drawn in ink mixed with powdered gold or sacred oils, meant to last through centuries of concealment. They bore layers of meaning, geographic outlines, astronomical references, and hidden geometrical grids that aligned with the Pleiades, Orion's belt, and the path of Venus. Certain points connected directly to Templar strongholds, cathedrals, or underground vaults rumored to contain artifacts. Others led to more mysterious sites, caves, deserts, or forgotten islands. Locations tied not to Christian tradition, but to older civilizations that the Templars studied and revered. The idea of a Templar grid has long fascinated historians and theorists. When lines are drawn connecting Templar churches, fortresses, and sacred sites across Europe and the Near East, patterns emerge. Pentagrams, hexagrams, and spirals that align with celestial events. Many have dismissed this as coincidence, but the precision is difficult to ignore. These formations were too exact, too intentional, to be mere chance. They suggest that the Templars were working with an ancient understanding of the Earth's energy fields, what later mystics would call ley lines, and that their mission was as much about aligning human civilization with cosmic order as it was about building temples or waging wars. The secret of sacred geometry, as the Templars understood it, was that every shape carried power. The circle represented divine unity, the triangle, the balance between body, mind, and spirit, the square, the earthly realm, and the pentagram, the symbol of human potential mirroring the divine. When combined in specific ratios, these forms created harmonic resonance, patterns that could affect both structure and consciousness. The Templars applied these principles not only to architecture, but to navigation and mapping. By encoding geometric ratios into their maps, they ensured that only those who understood these harmonics could interpret their true meaning. Some of these coded maps survived in unexpected forms. A few were disguised as devotional art. Mosaics or frescoes in chapels whose arrangements mirrored star constellations. Others were hidden in the floor patterns of cathedrals like Chartres and Rosslyn, where geometric labyrinths encoded distances and directions. Even illuminated manuscripts preserved by monastic libraries often contained ornate margins filled with repeating patterns, spirals, interlocking circles, and golden ratios that, when decoded, revealed geographic or astronomical coordinates. These weren't decorative flourishes. They were encrypted knowledge preserved in plain sight. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, often called the Cathedral of Codes, is perhaps the most famous example of this hidden cartography. Built by descendants of Templar sympathizers, its carvings contain geometric grids that mirror the patterns found in earlier Templar architecture. Some researchers believe these designs conceal the coordinates of sites tied to the Forbidden Mission, possibly even the location of artifacts or manuscripts transported after the fall of the Order. The intricate stonework, filled with symbols of stars, plants, and angels, acts as a multidimensional map, its meaning layered beneath centuries of religious allegory. The precision of Templar geometry has also led to theories that they possessed advanced navigational knowledge long before the official age of discovery. Certain maps attributed to them, though hidden under different names, show uncanny accuracy in the depiction of coastlines, including regions of the Americas that were supposedly unknown in medieval Europe. While mainstream historians attribute this to coincidence or later forgeries, some researchers argue that the Templars inherited ancient maritime knowledge, possibly from civilizations that predated recorded history. If true, It would mean that the Forbidden Mission extended not only through time, but across oceans, connecting distant worlds through geometry and faith. But perhaps the most astonishing idea is that these maps did not merely point to physical locations. They mapped the soul's journey. According to esoteric writings linked to Templar mysticism, the sacred geometry encoded in these diagrams was also meant to guide the initiate through inner transformation. Each line represented not only a path through the world, but a stage of spiritual awakening. To follow the map was to embark on a pilgrimage of consciousness, a journey mirroring the cosmos itself. The Templars believed that enlightenment was not given, but discovered, hidden in the same patterns that shaped the stars, the earth, and the human spirit. When the order was disbanded, these coded maps became the most guarded of all treasures. Some were destroyed, others scattered, and a few possibly integrated into later Masonic blueprints or navigational charts disguised as works of art. Yet their influence endures. The principles of sacred geometry that guided the Templars continue to appear in architecture, art, and even modern design, echoes of a wisdom that transcends time. The idea that divine order can be expressed through number and proportion still captivates those who seek meaning in the universe's design. What makes the Templars' use of sacred geometry so remarkable is its fusion of faith and science. They saw no divide between the two. To them, geometry was a divine language through which God had written the laws of creation. To understand, it was to read the mind of the Creator, a concept that later inspired generations of thinkers, from Renaissance artists to modern physicists. The Forbidden Mission, in this sense, was not only about discovering lost lands or hiding treasures. It was about decoding reality itself, using symbols and shapes as the bridge between heaven and earth. And so, the coded maps remain, fragments of a forgotten genius that united the spiritual with the mathematical, the earthly with the cosmic. Each one was a key, an invitation to those who could see beyond the surface, who could read the geometry of God hidden within the architecture of the world. For the Templars, these were not just maps to treasures. They were blueprints of creation, designed to guide future generations toward a deeper understanding of both the planet and the divine order that shaped it. For decades, the Templars stood as the most powerful and respected order in Christendom. Their banners flew across continents. Their fortresses dotted the trade routes from the Holy Land to France, and their influence reached into the very chambers of kings. Yet beneath that glory simmered fear. Fear in the hearts of monarchs and priests alike. The Templars had grown too rich, too independent, and most dangerously, too knowledgeable. What began as admiration soon turned to suspicion. The Church, once their greatest ally, would become their executioner, and the betrayal that followed would echo through centuries. The seeds of destruction were sown in whispers. The Templars' secrecy, once a symbol of discipline, began to arouse paranoia. Their cryptic rituals, private oaths, and hidden symbols, harmless to those who understood their purpose, were twisted into accusations of heresy. The same church that had sanctioned their mission began to suspect them of occult practices. It was said they worshipped false idols, spat on the cross, and performed dark rites in hidden chambers. None of this was true in the way it was claimed, but truth was irrelevant when power was at stake. King Philip IV of France, crushed by debt to the Templars, saw an opportunity. His kingdom's coffers were empty, his ambitions grand, and the order's wealth immense. What began as rumor soon became weapon. Philip and his advisors crafted a campaign of defamation, feeding the church with forged confessions and coerced testimonies. Under the guise of moral purification, they sought to dismantle the Templars and seize their treasures. Pope Clement V, torn between loyalty to the church and fear of the French crown, capitulated. In a single stroke of quill and decree, the fate of the most powerful order in Christendom was sealed. On a gray dawn in October 1307, the betrayal began. Across France, the king's soldiers struck simultaneously. Templar knights were dragged from their beds, chained, and hauled before inquisitors. Their commanderies were seized, their documents confiscated, their treasures, both real and rumored, vanished into royal vaults. The suddenness of the arrests stunned the world. How could an order that had once defended Jerusalem and guarded Europe's pilgrims now be branded as heretics? The answer, whispered through the corridors of power, was simple: fear of what they knew. The interrogations were brutal. Torture chambers became confession halls. Under unimaginable pain, some knights confessed to sins they had never committed, worshipping idols, denying Christ, consorting with demons. Yet even as they were broken, a pattern emerged in their words: repeated mentions of a secret, something sacred, something hidden, that the church feared above all else. The inquisitors sought to extract its location, but most knights took their knowledge to the grave. To the end, they guarded what they had sworn to protect: the heart of the Forbidden Mission. The betrayal reached its climax on March 18, 1314. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, was led to a pyre on the Isle de la Cite in Paris. As the flames licked at his feet, he raised his voice above the crackle of fire and cursed both king and pope, summoning them to divine judgment within the year. Chroniclers say that as he burned, a calm settled over him, the serenity of one who knew that his death would not end his order, nor its mission. Indeed, within a year, both Philip IV and Clement V were dead, their reigns cut short, as if fate itself had honored de Molay's curse. But the destruction of the Templars was not complete. Many knights escaped, warned by sympathizers within the church, or perhaps by secret intelligence networks the order had maintained for years. Some fled to Scotland, where they found refuge under Robert the Bruce, excommunicated by the Pope and therefore beyond the church's reach. Others vanished into Spain and Portugal, joining or forming new orders under different names. The Portuguese Order of Christ, for example, bore striking similarities to the Templars: same symbols, same vows, same ships that would later sail to unknown lands. The mission, though wounded, survived in silence. The church's betrayal was not merely political, it was ideological. The Templars had delved into knowledge that blurred the boundaries between religion and science, faith and philosophy. Their studies in astronomy, mathematics, and ancient mysticism threatened the church's monopoly on truth. To acknowledge their discoveries would be to admit that divine wisdom could exist outside ecclesiastical control, a thought the papacy could not abide. Thus, their persecution became not just a seizure of power, but an erasure of knowledge. Libraries were burned, manuscripts confiscated, and records rewritten to cast the Templars as villains. History itself was rewritten to bury the mission forever. Yet fragments survived: hidden manuscripts, coded carvings, whispered traditions passed down through generations. In these remnants, the Templars' true story endured, one of betrayal not by faith, but by fear. The Church, in trying to suppress them, unwittingly preserved their legend. For every lie it spread, curiosity grew among those who sensed a deeper truth beneath the surface. The Forbidden Mission, once confined to the shadows of secret archives, now began to echo through time, drawing seekers who would retrace the lost paths and unearth what had been buried in both earth and memory. Even within the Church, there were those who doubted the official narrative. Some clerics and scholars quietly preserved copies of confiscated texts, unable to destroy what they recognized as extraordinary knowledge. Over centuries, these fragments resurfaced in monasteries, libraries, and private collections. They told of maps, symbols, and relics hidden during the persecutions, treasures of wisdom meant not for power, but for preservation. The betrayal had scattered the pieces of the puzzle, but it could not erase them. Instead, it transformed the mission into myth, the myth into legend, and the legend into an unending mystery. In the centuries that followed, the Church would grow uneasy at every rumor of Templar resurgence. Whispers of hidden vaults beneath Paris, of secret ceremonies in Scotland, of coded manuscripts circulating among scholars. Each rumor rekindled the unease of that ancient betrayal. Because somewhere, deep in the Church's conscience, lingered the fear that the Templars' forbidden knowledge had survived, that the very truth they had tried to extinguish would one day return, revealing the true nature of power, faith, and the fragile line between the sacred and the suppressed. And so the betrayal, though centuries old, remains unfinished. For every record destroyed, a new clue emerges. For every falsehood, a truth waits patiently beneath layers of dust and silence. The Templars may have fallen in fire and shame, but their mission, their forbidden path, endured in whispers and symbols, carried by those who refuse to forget. The Church's greatest act of suppression may have only deepened the mystery, ensuring that the very secret it sought to destroy would survive forever, hidden in plain sight. When the flames of persecution swept across France, not all Templars were caught in their snare. Some vanished before the king's soldiers could strike, as if forewarned by unseen messengers. It was as though the order had always prepared for betrayal, keeping silent escape routes ready for the day the world turned against them. These routes, stretching from the forests of France to the harbors of the Atlantic, became arteries of survival, channels through which not only men, but secrets, relics, and knowledge were spirited away into the unknown. Rumors speak of coded warnings passed through monasteries and sympathetic noble houses in the days before the arrests. In some villages, locals recalled Templar riders galloping through the night, cloaks drawn tight, carrying sealed chests and bundles of manuscripts. Others spoke of wagons laden with church supplies that vanished into the mist and were never seen again. Whether these were exaggerations or fragments of truth, one thing is certain. When the king's agents came knocking, many commanderies were already empty. The most enigmatic escape route began at the port city of La Rochelle, the Templar stronghold on the French coast. There, the order maintained its own fleet, swift, black-hulled ships that had once ferried knights and cargo between Europe and the Holy Land. But on the morning of the arrests, witnesses claimed the harbor was bare. The Templar ships had sailed days before, vanishing into the Atlantic without trace. No records mark their destination. No survivor ever told their tale. The fleet's disappearance became one of history's great enigmas, a vanishing act that would fuel centuries of speculation. Some historians argue the Templars sailed north, seeking refuge in Scotland. The timing fits. Scotland, excommunicated and at odds with Rome, offered sanctuary beyond papal reach. The legend tells of Templar ships anchoring near Argyll, unloading chests under cover of fog, and finding protection under Robert the Bruce, whose victory at Bannockburn would soon cement his rule. Many believe that among Bruce's soldiers fought mysterious knights in white mantles, warriors with the discipline and skill of the Templars, who tipped the scales in Scotland's favor. But others insist the fleet sailed west, far beyond the familiar seas. The Templars were expert navigators, masters of maps few had ever seen. They possessed ancient maritime knowledge gathered from the East, from Arab scholars, Byzantine traders, and perhaps even more ancient sources. Could they have reached unknown lands centuries before Columbus? Some old maps found in Portuguese archives depict strange coastlines labeled with Templar crosses, drawn long before the age of discovery began. To some, these maps are proof that the Order's secret mission continued on distant shores. Portugal presents another mystery. After the suppression of the Templars, King Denis of Portugal refused to turn against them. Instead, he reconstituted the Order under a new name, the Order of Christ, and placed its former members at the helm. They wore new symbols, swore new oaths, but the essence remained. Their ships carried the same red cross, their rituals mirrored the old ways, and their fortune built the foundation of Portugal's maritime empire. Centuries later, explorers like Henry the Navigator would sail under the same cross, reaching the edges of the known world. Was this coincidence, or the Templar mission reborn under royal protection? Across Europe, traces of escape routes appear like scattered footprints. In Germany, small Templar enclaves reportedly melted into local chivalric orders. In Switzerland, mountain fortresses became safe havens for exiled knights. In Italy, cryptic symbols carved into chapel walls hint at hidden gatherings long after the order's official dissolution. Each clue whispers the same story. The Templars did not vanish. They adapted. Like a current flowing underground, they moved unseen, waiting for the time to surface again. Legends from southern France tell of treasure convoys crossing the Pyrenees into Spain, where sympathetic lords offered protection. Some say the chests contained gold and relics from the Temple of Solomon. Others claim they held something far more dangerous: ancient manuscripts detailing forbidden knowledge, guarded since Jerusalem's fall. In certain versions, these relics were hidden in secret vaults beneath Catalonian monasteries, their locations encoded within stone reliefs and stained glass patterns. To this day, archaeologists and treasure hunters scour these regions, searching for signs of the vanished legacy. The notion of a Templar diaspora isn't mere fantasy. Traces of their influence ripple through later centuries in unexpected places. In Portugal's exploration fleets, in Scottish Freemasonry, in the esoteric symbolism of Renaissance art, echoes of their presence remain. Some scholars believe that the Templar fleet didn't just flee for survival. It carried with it the most sacred artifact of the Order's secret mission, possibly something they believed too powerful to fall into the hands of king or pope. Whether it was the Grail, the Ark, or a relic of divine wisdom, none can say. But whatever it was, it became the heart of their continued silence. In the chronicles of the Church, the Templar fleet simply disappears. No shipwrecks, no captured vessels, no returning sailors. Such absence defies ordinary explanation. Medieval Europe was not a world of secrecy. Merchants, ports, and spies watched every ship that sailed. For an entire fleet to vanish suggests deliberate intent. Some modern researchers point to evidence of prearranged alliances with coastal monasteries, whose tunnels led to hidden coves and inlets. Others speculate that the fleet used ancient navigation routes recorded on secret maps, perhaps inherited from earlier civilizations whose knowledge the Templars had preserved. There is also the tantalizing theory of transatlantic contact. Carvings found in Nova Scotia, symbols etched into stones in New England, and even fragments of medieval European metals buried along ancient shorelines have all been cited as possible evidence of the Templar presence. Though mainstream historians dismiss such claims as coincidence, the possibility refuses to die. The idea that the Templars carried their mission westward, to a land beyond the Church's reach, has become one of the great enduring legends of the Order. Yet the deeper mystery lies not in where they went, but in why. What compelled them to disappear so completely? If their sole aim was survival, some could have surrendered, confessed, and sought pardon. But they did not. They chose exile and secrecy over absolution. That decision suggests something greater, a duty unfinished, a vow unbroken. Whatever the Forbidden Mission was, it required them to vanish from history's gaze, to protect knowledge that the world was not yet ready to receive. Centuries later, whispers of that vanished fleet would haunt the corridors of power. Secret societies claiming descent from the Templars would rise, their symbols echoing the same red cross, their philosophies shaped by the same pursuit of hidden truth. Whether these groups were genuine heirs or romantic imitators hardly matters, for the legend of the escape and the fleet gave birth to a new idea: that truth can survive destruction, that faith can persist without temples, and that the greatest secrets are carried not in gold or stone, but in the hearts of those who refuse to forget. And so, the Templars vanished, not defeated but transformed. Their ships sailed into the horizon of history, leaving behind only questions, symbols, and silence. Yet somewhere beyond the edge of maps, their mission continued, preserved by those who knew that the world would one day need what they had protected. When the world believed the Templars had been erased, something far quieter, far more deliberate, began to unfold beneath the surface of history. The Order was officially gone, its leaders executed, its assets seized, its name cursed from pulpits. Yet whispers persisted. Not all had perished. In hidden monasteries, in forgotten valleys, in secret chambers beneath cathedrals, the Templar flame flickered on, concealed within new identities and guarded by oaths older than kingdoms. Their legacy did not die in the flames of Paris. It merely changed its form, like light bending through glass, unseen but still present. Europe in the 14th century was a world of shifting power and growing silence. The Church's authority loomed unchallenged, yet behind its grand facades lingered the faint echo of what it had tried to destroy. In remote corners of France and Portugal, travelers spoke of strange hermit knights who never revealed their names. They lived simply, prayed privately, and vanished whenever questioned. Some wore rings carved with faint, familiar crosses, not the proud red cross of the old Templar banners, but smaller, subtler versions, etched like memories on metal. To the unknowing eye, they were just wanderers. To those who could read the signs, they were the keepers of a lost vow. Portugal became the beating heart of this hidden survival. King Denis's creation of the Order of Christ provided an official refuge for those who had once worn the Templar mantle. Its founding charter used careful wording, avoiding direct reference to the old order, yet preserving its rules, structure, and discipline. Former Templars swore allegiance anew, but in their hearts, they knew what they were continuing. When they raised their banners under the symbol of the cross fleury, it was not a replacement, but a continuation, the next chapter in the same sacred narrative. From within this quiet transformation, the Templars' hidden network evolved. Some knights took to trade and exploration, using their maritime experience to serve Portugal's growing ambitions at sea. Others remained in Europe, moving through circles of scholars, artisans, and architects. They carried with them fragments of their forbidden knowledge, geometry, astronomy, and secret codes rooted in the sacred mathematics they had once learned from Eastern mystics. Slowly, these ideas began to surface in cathedrals, manuscripts, and the mysterious art of the Renaissance. The Templar legacy had found a new disguise, not as warriors, but as builders, thinkers, and visionaries. One of the most enigmatic traces of this survival lies in the symbols carved into Europe's stone. Across cathedrals in Portugal, Spain, and southern France, certain motifs appear repeatedly. The equal-armed cross, the rose within a circle, the double-headed eagle. To the casual observer, they are mere decoration. But to those versed in Templar lore, they are messages, hidden fingerprints left by those who refuse to let their knowledge die. Some claim the great Manueline architecture of Portugal, with its rope patterns and maritime emblems, encodes the order's nautical legacy, a visual scripture of their continued mission, blending Christian devotion with cosmic design. In Scotland, the story deepens. After the persecution, the exiled Templars who found refuge under Robert the Bruce integrated into local noble families, forming the quiet backbone of a new tradition, one that centuries later would emerge as the Freemasons. Though debated fiercely, the parallels are striking. Secret initiations, sacred geometry, symbolic architecture, and a moral code emphasizing brotherhood and enlightenment. Some researchers argue that the earliest Masonic lodges were built upon the remnants of Templar commanderies, carrying forward not only their symbols, but also their spiritual purpose, to safeguard the ancient wisdom of humanity under the guise of craft and fraternity. The Church, perhaps sensing what lingered beneath the surface, maintained its vigilance. Even as centuries passed, papal edicts continued to warn against secret brotherhoods and heretical gatherings. But these new incarnations of the Templar ideal were clever. They operated in layers of secrecy, blending sacred allegory with art, philosophy, and mathematics. The deeper meanings were hidden in plain sight, in paintings, cathedral blueprints, and even music. A single column placement, a star pattern on a ceiling, a sequence of notes, all could carry encoded messages linking back to the old mission. Legends speak of the Silent Circle, a clandestine council of Templar heirs said to meet once each century, passing down oral traditions and updating the hidden archives. While historians treat this as myth, certain correspondences found in old monasteries hint at organized preservation. One document from the 15th century mentions brothers of the temple who still labor in the vineyard of the Lord, though no longer in his name. Another describes a secret library somewhere in Portugal, containing relics and scrolls hidden during the persecutions, knowledge too sacred for the ignorant and too dangerous for the proud. The Templar legacy also found shelter in symbolism, a universal language immune to suppression. The rose and cross, the compass and square, the triangle within a circle. These shapes appear repeatedly across art, architecture, and manuscripts after the order's fall. Each symbol carries layers of meaning: faith, unity, balance, and the harmony of opposites. Some believe these symbols formed part of a secret codex, preserving spiritual truths derived from ancient sources, Egyptian mystery schools, Gnostic texts, and the teachings of the early mystics. To the initiated, they represented a roadmap to enlightenment. To the uninitiated, mere ornament. And then there are the whispers of the Templar bloodlines, families that, through careful unions and secrecy, preserve the lineage of the old order. Throughout Europe, certain noble houses carried coats of arms, incorporating Templar crosses long after the order's destruction. In France and Scotland, records show marriages between exiled knights and local aristocracy. Over generations, these alliances created a web of influence stretching into politics, religion, and science. Some of Europe's most enlightened thinkers, astronomers, philosophers, even monarchs, are rumored to have been descendants or initiates of this hidden current, guided quietly by those who still followed the old path. The survival of the Templar legacy wasn't just a matter of endurance. It was an act of transformation. The order had learned that truth could not survive in confrontation with power. It could only persist through adaptation. So they abandoned their visible armor and built a new one out of ideas, symbols, and stories. They allowed myths to cloak them, letting legends serve as camouflage. In doing so, they became immortal, not as a military order, but as a current of thought flowing through history's hidden channels. By the time the Renaissance dawned, the Templar spirit was everywhere and nowhere at once. In the secret academies of Florence, in the alchemical laboratories of Prague, in the whispered correspondences between philosophers and explorers, their ideals had taken root. Freedom of thought, pursuit of divine knowledge, the unity of science and spirit. All these were Templar principles reborn in new language. The Church had destroyed their bodies, but not their essence. Their mission, whatever its forbidden truth, had survived in the minds and hearts of those who refused to let the flame die. And so, through secrecy, adaptation, and time, the Templars became something greater than any army or kingdom. They became a myth that breathed, a living memory woven into architecture, art, and intellect. Even today, that memory stirs. Every time we glimpse a red cross carved in a stone, or see a cathedral ceiling aligned with the stars, or hear the whisper of hidden brotherhoods moving through the corridors of history, we are witnessing the echo of their survival, the shadows of those who refuse to vanish. For centuries, historians have wondered what the Knights Templar truly guarded behind the walls of their fortified commanderies, and more importantly, what they carried away when their empire began to crumble. It wasn't just gold or relics that vanished with the Order's fall. It was knowledge, and somewhere, hidden in forgotten vaults and silent manuscripts, that knowledge might still exist. The story begins long before their downfall. From their earliest days, the Templars were more than warriors. They were collectors of secrets. As they rose to power, their influence stretched across continents, from the deserts of Jerusalem to the mist-covered cathedrals of Europe. But within their network of fortresses, they maintained something few knew existed: a vast repository of scrolls, maps, relics, and coded texts. The Templars called it simply the Archive. These archives were said to hold everything they had gathered from their expeditions to the east: fragments of lost gospels, treatises on sacred geometry, fragments of pre-Christian mysticism, and knowledge inherited from civilizations far older than Israel or Rome. Some claim that deep within their underground libraries lay evidence of ancient contacts, maps of lands that should not have existed, diagrams of star alignments beyond the understanding of medieval science, and references to a hidden energy that sustained all creation. According to certain esoteric sources, these archives were divided into two parts. The first was practical, documents of administration, banking, logistics, and war. The second, known only to the highest initiates, was sacred. This inner archive contained the Order's most guarded knowledge, teachings on consciousness, geometry, and what they believed to be the divine architecture of reality. One legend claims that the Templars had in their possession fragments of a text discovered beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple, a scroll written in an ancient language older than Hebrew, describing the science of the builders. The text supposedly explained how the temple was not merely a place of worship, but a harmonic device, aligned with cosmic frequencies to bridge the physical and spiritual realms. To the initiated, such a concept would not be blasphemy. It would be revelation. The Templars, if these stories are to be believed, dedicated themselves to deciphering these secrets. Their fortresses became laboratories of the spirit. Within their thick stone walls, knights, scribes, and mystics studied geometry, astronomy, and the coded meanings of Scripture. They sought patterns in the stars and saw reflections of divine design in the proportions of cathedrals and the motion of celestial bodies. But knowledge of this kind is dangerous, not because it destroys faith, but because it redefines it. If the Templars truly believed that God's laws could be understood through geometry, vibration, and consciousness, then they were treading perilously close to forbidden territory. To claim that divine truth could be discovered through human inquiry was to challenge the Church's monopoly on revelation. There are whispers that as the 13th century drew to a close, the Templars knew their downfall was coming. Their Grand Masters had received warnings, letters and visions suggesting that the Crown and the Church would soon unite against them. In those final years, the Order acted quickly and quietly. Certain commanderies were emptied overnight. Shipments left ports in France and Spain under the cover of darkness. Monks who had spent decades guarding archives vanished without trace. The Church would later claim that the Templars' wealth disappeared. But perhaps what disappeared was not gold. It was the archive. Where did it go? No one knows for certain. Some say it was taken to Scotland, to the remote Rosslyn Glen, where cryptic carvings and hidden chambers still whisper of Templar influence. Others insist it was spirited away to Portugal, where the surviving knights reformed as the Order of Christ and carried their secret knowledge across the seas, guiding the great navigators of the Age of Discovery. There are even theories that portions of the archive found their way into the hands of certain monastic scholars, men who later became the hidden architects of the Renaissance. The sudden explosion of art, science, and humanist philosophy during that period might not have been coincidence, but the reawakening of Templar wisdom, geometry, optics, sacred proportion, all the sciences the Church once forbade, suddenly flourished as if resurrected from an ancient tomb. But perhaps the greatest mystery lies in the Templar silence. For an order accused of heresy and witchcraft, there was almost no outcry, no attempt to justify their beliefs. They simply vanished into the fog of history, as if retreating behind an invisible curtain. It's as though they knew the truth they had discovered could not be defended with words, only preserved through symbols, architecture, and the quiet initiation of those deemed worthy. In the centuries that followed, strange echoes appeared, symbols carved in unexpected places, manuscripts written in indecipherable code, and geometric designs hidden in church floors and cathedral windows. Each seemed to carry a fragment of the same message. The light is hidden, not lost. Modern researchers who have examined these patterns believe that the Templar archive was not just a collection of writings. It was a blueprint for awakening human consciousness. Through understanding sacred proportion, one could align the body, mind, and spirit with the harmonic order of the cosmos. To the Templars, this was the true meaning of faith, not blind obedience, but inner illumination. If this was indeed their secret, it would explain why their persecution was so absolute. To the powers of their age, such knowledge threatened everything. It shifted authority from external institutions to the human soul itself. And so the archive was hunted, buried, fragmented, but never entirely destroyed. Even today, historians and explorers claim to find traces of it, encoded frescoes, in the geometry of Gothic cathedrals, in the writings of later alchemists and mystics. The same patterns, the same ratios, the same language of hidden light. Perhaps the Templars succeeded in their final mission. Perhaps their greatest treasure was never meant to be kept, but planted, like a seed scattered across the ages, waiting for those who could read the signs. And if that's true, then somewhere, beneath the stones of forgotten temples, in the geometry of cathedrals, or in the quiet meditations of the human spirit, the lost archive still lives. Not as parchment and ink, but as a living current of wisdom, still whispering through time. Seek the light that survives the fire. For what was hidden beneath the cross was never lost, only waiting to be remembered. When the first Crusaders reached Jerusalem in 1099, they came seeking land, relics, and divine redemption. But the Knights Templar, those 9 mysterious warriors who would soon become legends, had another purpose. Historical records say they were stationed within the ruins of Solomon's temple, ostensibly to protect pilgrims. Yet in truth, they spent 9 years beneath the temple excavating. What they sought, and what they found, remains one of the most enduring enigmas in human history. Ancient scrolls speak of vast chambers beneath the Temple Mount, tunnels and vaults that predated even the time of King Solomon. The Templars were not simple soldiers. Many were learned men with knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and sacred architecture. They knew that the temple was built according to cosmic principles, its dimensions aligning with the movement of the stars. What they uncovered in those hidden depths may have been the remnants of a civilization older than recorded history. Rumors began to spread among the crusading ranks that the Templars had found relics of unearthly power, tablets of strange metal engraved with symbols no scholar could read, fragments of scrolls describing the machinery of creation, and a vessel of shining stone that radiated light without flame. To the Church, such stories were heresy. To the Templars, they were revelation. These discoveries challenged the very foundation of dogma, suggesting that divine knowledge was not confined to Scripture, but encoded in the fabric of the universe itself. Later chronicles, written in veiled language, hint that the order had unearthed not objects, but understanding, secrets about consciousness, energy, and the geometry of existence. It was said that they studied texts from ancient Egypt and Babylon, learning that sacred architecture was not merely symbolic, but energetic, designed to harness unseen forces that connected heaven and earth. In their eyes, the Temple of Solomon was more than a holy site. It was a machine of initiation, built to elevate the mind toward divine perception. This revelation changed the Templars forever. Their rituals began to mirror those ancient rites, initiation ceremonies involving darkness, silence, and symbolic death and rebirth. They no longer sought God through fear or submission, but through illumination, by aligning the inner temple of the soul with the cosmic temple of the stars. Such ideas were revolutionary and dangerous. To the Church, they smelled of blasphemy. To the Templars, they were truth. Some historians believe this forbidden knowledge shaped the very architecture of Gothic cathedrals. When the Templars returned to Europe, cathedral design transformed almost overnight. Towers soared toward the heavens, rose windows traced sacred geometry, and light itself became the medium of worship. It was as if the builders were trying to recreate the lost science of the temple, embedding divine mathematics into stone. Even the compass and square motifs seen in later Masonic symbolism trace their lineage to these Templar revelations. But the Templars' understanding went deeper still. Certain coded writings refer to the living light, a force said to exist within all things, binding the physical and spiritual worlds. They believed this light could be awakened through discipline, meditation, and sacred vibration, what later mystics would call the philosopher's fire. The more they explored, the more they realized how closely ancient Hermeticism, Jewish Kabbalah, and early Christian mysticism aligned. All spoke of the same truth, hidden beneath layers of metaphor. This was the knowledge the Templars could never reveal openly. It defied dogma and threatened the authority of the Church, for it implied that every soul contained a spark of divinity, that salvation was not granted by priests, but discovered within. Such a message, if spread, could shatter the entire hierarchy of medieval faith. And so, the order guarded it fiercely, passing it only through symbols, architecture, and coded manuscripts. Somewhere between the sword and the chalice, between war and worship, the Templars had crossed into the realm of the initiates. They no longer saw themselves as mere knights of Christ, but as keepers of an ancient current of wisdom stretching back to Egypt, to Babylon, to the dawn of human thought. Their true crusade was not for the Holy Land, but for the holy knowledge buried beneath it. When the Church turned against them, it wasn't simply for greed or power. It was fear. Fear that the Templars had seen too much, that they had touched the forbidden and learned that God was not a distant throne in heaven, but the living light within the human mind, and that, perhaps, was their ultimate heresy.
When the Templars returned from the Holy Land, they brought more than gold and relics. They carried something invisible, a code, a philosophy, a new way of seeing the universe. To the outside world, they remained devout Christian warriors. But within their secret circles, another current flowed, a doctrine known only to the inner order, whispered through symbols, encoded in architecture, and hidden behind vows of silence. At its heart, this secret doctrine taught that God was not a being, but force, an all-pervading intelligence that manifested through light, geometry, and vibration. The world, they believed, was not created once in time, but continuously, through the patterns of consciousness itself. Everything, from the structure of a cathedral to the orbit of planets, followed the same divine ratios, the same sacred mathematics. The Templars called this the measure of God. Only a few were ever initiated into these mysteries. New recruits to the order swore loyalty to Christ and to their Grand Master, but those chosen for the deeper initiations took different oaths. Older ones. They invoked not saints, but the architect of the universe. Their rituals blended Christian prayers with fragments of Hermetic invocations and Hebrew chants. In candlelit chambers beneath Templar commanderies, the initiates would meditate upon geometric diagrams, circles within squares, triangles within circles, each symbol reflecting a cosmic truth. To them, the cross was more than a weapon of faith. It was a map for directions representing the elements and a center where spirit and matter unite. The chalice was not merely the cup of Christ, but a vessel of transformation, symbolizing the soul's ability to hold divine light. Even the act of knighthood itself, kneeling before the blade, was reinterpreted as a surrender of ego before the higher will. Every gesture had meaning, every emblem a hidden teaching. This inner doctrine drew heavily upon what they had uncovered in the East. They studied the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Egyptian concept of Ka and Ba, and the Sufi teachings of divine unity. They saw in every tradition a single thread, the idea that the divine spark resides within man, and that enlightenment is not granted but remembered. To awaken this spark was to fulfill the true purpose of existence. Yet this teaching stood in direct opposition to the Church's authority. If salvation was found within, what role remained for priests or popes? If man could commune directly with the divine, then the power structures of religion would crumble. The Templars knew this. That is why their doctrine had to remain hidden, preserved only through allegory, symbol, and code. Some scholars believe that this inner knowledge became the foundation of later secret societies, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, even certain strands of alchemy. The same patterns repeat: the reverence for geometry, the concept of spiritual rebirth, the belief in the hidden unity behind all religions. The Templar flame, though extinguished publicly, may have survived in the shadows, passed from initiate to initiate through the centuries. Legends tell of manuscript, the Liber Arcana, said to have been written by the inner orders shortly before their downfall. It described the process of awakening the inner light, the so-called Templar fire. Though no verified copy has ever surfaced, fragments of its language appear in later alchemical texts, especially in the phrase lux occulta, the hidden light. Those who have studied these parallels believe the Liber Arcana was less a religious text and more a manual for inner transformation. If true, it would mean that the Templars were not simply knights or builders, but initiates of a timeless mystery school, heirs of the same knowledge once guarded by the priests of Egypt and the sages of Babylon. And if this doctrine truly survived, it might explain why certain cathedrals, symbols, and secret brotherhoods across Europe carry the unmistakable fingerprint of the Templar mind. But there is another possibility, one even darker. Some chronicles suggest that the inner order's teachings went beyond spiritual illumination, that they had discovered a technology of consciousness. Through vibration, sound, and sacred geometry, they believed it was possible to alter physical reality, to shape matter itself through focus and tension. In their eyes, this was a true power of creation, the divine spark awakened within man. Such an idea, in the eyes of the medieval world, bordered on sorcery. It blurred the line between prayer and command, between devotion and godhood. To claim such power was to rival the Creator, and that could not be tolerated. Thus, the inner order's doctrine had to be concealed, fragmented, and buried beneath centuries of allegory. Its echoes remain in Gothic arches, in cryptic manuscripts, and in the silent rituals of those who still seek the light hidden behind the veil. For the Templars, knowledge was the truest treasure, and perhaps that was their ultimate sin, not worshiping darkness, but daring to seek too much light.
It happened almost overnight. One of the most powerful orders in Christendom suddenly branded as heretics, hunted like outlaws, and erased from history in a single, chilling stroke. The year was 1307. The date, Friday the 13th, a day that would echo through legend for centuries. Before dawn broke, soldiers across France moved in silence, carrying sealed orders from King Philip IV. By sunrise, the Knights Templar were no longer protectors of the faith. They were prisoners of it. What followed was not merely a political maneuver. It was an exorcism of power. The Church and the Crown, long indebted to the Templars both financially and spiritually, turned their wrath upon the very knights who had once been their sword and shield. Yet behind the public accusations, heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, there lay a deeper fear. The Templars had seen too much, known too much, and perhaps discovered truths that could shatter the fragile architecture of the medieval world. According to official records, the charges were grotesque. The Templars were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross, engaging in obscene initiation rites, and worshipping a mysterious idol, a head known as Baphomet. Under torture, many confessed to crimes they never committed. Yet within those forced confessions lingered fragments of something else, whispers of secret knowledge, of hidden worship not of the devil, but of a divine force beyond church control. Some scholars argue that Baphomet was never a demon at all, but a code, a cipher for the Templars' secret doctrine. The word, when broken down through ancient Abash substitution, reveals a startling translation: Sophia, the Greek word for wisdom. The Templars may have revered not an idol, but the principle of divine wisdom, the feminine aspect of God long suppressed by Orthodox religion. If so, then their true heresy was not devil worship, but balance, the acknowledgement of both light and shadow, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter as equal expressions of the divine. For King Philip, none of this mattered. He owed the order vast sums of money. Their growing independence threatened his throne, and perhaps he feared the influence they held over the hearts and minds of the people. Men who bowed neither to king nor pope, but to their own ancient code. By destroying the Templars, Philip could erase his debt, seize their wealth, and silence any philosophy that challenged his divine right to rule. On October 13th, hundreds of knights were dragged from their commanderies, shackled, and interrogated. The Inquisition showed no mercy. Torture chambers became the stage for confessions, and fire the final absolution. Yet even under the most brutal suffering, many Templars refused to betray the deeper truth of their order. They died with sealed lips, carrying their secrets into the flames. The most haunting story of all is that of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. After years of imprisonment and torture, he was brought to the steps of Notre Dame in 1314. There, as the sentence of death by fire was read aloud, he did not beg for forgiveness or mercy. Instead, he proclaimed his innocence and the innocence of his brothers before the gathered crowd. With the flames rising around him, he called down a curse upon both the king and the pope, summoning them to appear before God's judgment within a year. According to chroniclers, both men, Philip IV and Pope Clement V, were dead within months. That single event marked the end of the Templars' public existence, but perhaps not their true end. As the flames devoured their last Grand Master, rumors spread that not all the knights had been captured. Some had fled across the sea, carrying with them their most sacred treasures, not gold or silver, but scrolls, maps, and relics from the Temple of Solomon. These exiled Templars, according to legend, became the seeds of hidden brotherhoods, preserving the secret doctrine in silence for centuries to come. Certain historical traces seem to support this. Templar ships vanished from La Rochelle the night before the arrests, their cargo and destination unknown. Entire commanderies in Scotland and Portugal were never raided, protected, perhaps, by sympathetic kings who refused to betray them. In those lands, the Templar legacy lived on under new banners. In Portugal, they became the Order of Christ, the same order that would later fund explorers like Henry the Navigator, whose voyages would open the New World. In Scotland, it is said that exiled Templars fought beside Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn, turning the tide of battle with strange banners and unearthly courage. But even in silence, the Church could not erase their mark. The Templars had left their symbols carved into stone, woven into cathedrals, encoded in manuscripts that outlived their persecutors. And in those hidden corners of Europe, in underground chapels, in old Masonic rituals, in the architecture of forgotten abbeys, the essence of their inner doctrine endured. What the Church called heresy may have been the remnants of an ancient science of the soul, a system that bridged the visible and the invisible, faith and reason, heaven and earth. To destroy such knowledge was to dim a light that had burned for centuries. Yet paradoxically, that very act of suppression ensured its survival. Foreknowledge forbidden is knowledge preserved. The fall of the Templars was not merely a tragedy, it was a transformation. Their mission, whatever its true purpose, did not die with Jacques de Molay. It went underground, into the secret veins of Western civilization. The builders, the alchemists, the philosophers of the Renaissance, all drew from a well whose source lay hidden beneath the ashes of the temple. And perhaps this was always part of the plan. Perhaps the Templars, aware of their impending doom, scattered their wisdom like seeds to bloom in future ages when the world was ready to hear again what had once been silenced. Their monuments, their symbols, their cryptic maps and rituals all became whispers in stone, pointing toward a legacy that even fire could not destroy. So when we speak of the end of the Templars, we speak only of their visible form. The true order, the one that sought divine wisdom beyond doctrine, that guarded the hidden light of human consciousness, simply changed its shape, taking refuge in mystery. And if the stories are true, then somewhere, even now, their ancient vow continues, carried by those who still walk the hidden path, sworn to guard the secret mission that began beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple. Centuries have passed since the fires of Paris consumed the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. The ashes of Jacques de Molay have long scattered into the wind, yet his curse and his vow seem to have endured. For though the order was destroyed in name, something of its essence survived. The Templars may have fallen, but the current they awakened continued to flow, unseen, beneath the surface of history, like a hidden flame that refuses to die. Every few generations, that flame flickers into view again. In the architecture of a cathedral, in the seal of secret society, in the compass and square of the Freemasons, and even in the modern pursuit of esoteric truth. Each whisper seems to trace back to the same invisible source, a body of knowledge that speaks of hidden geometry, divine light, and the power of consciousness to shape reality itself. If we look closely, the Templar legacy is everywhere. In the 15th century, Portuguese navigators, heirs to the Templar Order of Christ, launched voyages that would reshape the world. Their ships, bearing red crosses on white sails, sailed into uncharted seas guided by mysterious maps and celestial knowledge said to have come from the East. Some believe those maps were fragments of the Templar archives, the same that had once lain hidden beneath Solomon's temple. Even the design of the great cathedrals that followed carries their invisible signature. Gothic spires reaching toward heaven are not merely acts of devotion. They're living geometry, resonating with cosmic order. The light that filters through stained glass does not just illuminate, it transforms. Every curve, every proportion, every alignment reflects the same sacred ratios the Templars once studied in Jerusalem. The world may have forgotten their names, but their code of creation remains etched in stone. By the 17th and 18th centuries, that code re-emerged in a new form through the rise of Freemasonry. In its symbols, the all-seeing eye, the twin pillars, the unfinished temple, we find echoes of the same Templar philosophy, that the human being is a builder, shaping his inner world as he shapes the outer. Masonic legends speak of the lost word, a secret of divine origin that grants understanding of the universe. Could this be a survival of the Templar inner doctrine, rephrased for a new age? There are deeper connections still. Some researchers believe that Rosicrucian manifestos of the early 1600s, texts filled with alchemical symbolism and the promise of hidden wisdom, were inspired by secret manuscripts carried westward by fleeing Templars centuries earlier. The Rosicrucians, like the Templars, sought not power, but illumination, the transformation of man into a being of light. Their motto, Ex Deo Nascimer, in Jesu Morimer, Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus, mirrors the same rebirth initiation that defined Templar rituals of death and resurrection. Across continents and centuries, this hidden current flowed, adapting, transforming, disguising itself in art, science, and philosophy. The Templar vision of divine unity slowly began to reappear under new guises. The great thinkers of the Renaissance, Da Vinci, Bruno, Campanella, all flirted with the same forbidden ideas, that God is geometry, that the universe is alive with intelligence, that man's mind is a mirror of creation. These were the very ideas for which the Templars had once burned. And so the question arises, did their mission ever truly end, or did it merely evolve, finding new guardians in each age? Some modern historians have suggested that the Templar treasure was never gold or jewels, but something far more valuable, knowledge. A manuscript, perhaps, or a set of teachings describing the link between consciousness and the material world. In recent decades, scientists exploring quantum physics have stumbled upon similar paradoxes, realities where observation affects matter, where intention shapes outcome. Concepts that mirror ancient Hermetic thought, the same current the Templars once guarded in silence. It's as if the wisdom buried in the Temple of Solomon has begun to re-emerge, clothed now in the language of science rather than scripture. Even in our modern world, in architecture, symbolism, and secret institutions, their influence lingers. Washington, D.C., for example, is filled with Templar and Masonic geometry. The compass, the pentagram, the alignment of monuments to celestial events. The very idea of building a new world echoes the Templar dream, a world where knowledge and spirit coexist in harmony. Whether coincidence or continuity, the pattern is undeniable. But what if the Templars' hidden mission wasn't just about preserving knowledge, but preparing the world for something? There are theories, whispered in the margins of occult history, that the Templars foresaw an age when humanity would awaken once more to the reality of the divine within. They called it the Age of the Phoenix, an era when the old order would burn away and the light of inner wisdom would rise again from the ashes. Their secret symbols, the rose, the cross, the double-headed eagle, all speak of this cycle of death and rebirth, darkness and illumination. Perhaps the Templars knew that truth could not be imposed. It had to be rediscovered, generation after generation, by those willing to question the world's illusions. Perhaps that is why they built their knowledge into stone, into symbols, into the very architecture of civilization itself. They knew that even if their order was destroyed, the message would endure, waiting for those with eyes to see. And here we are, centuries later, still searching for their meaning. The Forbidden Mission may not have been a journey to claim relics or conquer kingdoms, but a spiritual task, to protect the bridge between heaven and earth, between science and spirit, between man and the infinite. When we study their story, we are not merely uncovering a medieval mystery. We are gazing into a mirror, one that reflects our own forgotten potential. The Templars remind us that faith and reason need not be enemies, that the universe is not dead matter, but living consciousness, and that enlightenment is not confined to temples of stone, but lies dormant within each of us. Perhaps this is the true legacy of the Templar mission, not the preservation of secret texts or treasures, but the quiet transmission of an idea, that humanity itself is the temple, that within every human heart burns a spark of the same divine fire they once sought beneath the sands of Jerusalem. And maybe, in this age of confusion and disconnection, the hidden flame they guarded is not lost at all. It is simply waiting within us to be remembered, because the greatest secret the Templars ever held was not buried in vaults or encoded in manuscripts. It was alive. It was consciousness itself. And those centuries have tried to bury it, silence it, and twist its meaning. The flame still flickers in the minds of those who seek truth above fear. The Forbidden Templar Mission was never about conquest. It was a calling, a whisper through time, inviting us to awaken the divine light within and continue the work they began. The mission is not over. It has only changed hands. It happened almost overnight. One of the most powerful orders in Christendom suddenly branded as heretics, hunted like outlaws, and erased from history in a single, chilling stroke. The year was 1307. The date, Friday the 13th, a day that would echo through legend for centuries. Before dawn broke, soldiers across France moved in silence, carrying sealed orders from King Philip IV. By sunrise, the Knights Templar were no longer protectors of the faith. They were prisoners of it. What followed was not merely a political maneuver. It was an exorcism of power. The Church and the Crown, long indebted to the Templars both financially and spiritually, turned their wrath upon the very knights who had once been their sword and shield. Yet behind the public accusations, heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, there lay a deeper fear. The Templars had seen too much, known too much, and perhaps discovered truths that could shatter the fragile architecture of the medieval world. According to official records, the charges were grotesque. The Templars were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross, engaging in obscene initiation rites, and worshipping a mysterious idol, a head known as Baphomet. Under torture, many confessed to crimes they never committed. Yet within those forced confessions lingered fragments of something else, whispers of secret knowledge, of hidden worship not of the devil, but of a divine force beyond church control. Some scholars argue that Baphomet was never a demon at all, but a code, a cipher for the Templars' secret doctrine. The word, when broken down through ancient Abash substitution, reveals a startling translation: Sophia, the Greek word for wisdom. The Templars may have revered not an idol, but the principle of divine wisdom, the feminine aspect of God long suppressed by Orthodox religion. If so, then their true heresy was not devil worship, but balance, the acknowledgement of both light and shadow, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter as equal expressions of the divine. For King Philip, none of this mattered. He owed the order vast sums of money. Their growing independence threatened his throne, and perhaps he feared the influence they held over the hearts and minds of the people, men who bowed neither to king nor pope, but to their own ancient code. By destroying the Templars, Philip could erase his debt, seize their wealth, and silence any philosophy that challenged his divine right to rule. On October 13th, hundreds of knights were dragged from their commanderies, shackled, and interrogated. The Inquisition showed no mercy. Torture chambers became the stage for confessions, and fire the final absolution. Yet even under the most brutal suffering, many Templars refused to betray the deeper truth of their order. They died with sealed lips, carrying their secrets into the flames. The most haunting story of all is that of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. After years of imprisonment and torture, he was brought to the steps of Notre Dame in 1314. There, as the sentence of death by fire was read aloud, he did not beg for forgiveness or mercy. Instead, he proclaimed his innocence and the innocence of his brothers before the gathered crowd. With the flames rising around him, he called down a curse upon both the king and the pope, summoning them to appear before God's judgment within a year. According to chroniclers, both men, Philip IV and Pope Clement V, were dead within months. That single event marked the end of the Templars' public existence, but perhaps not their true end. As the flames devoured their last Grand Master, rumors spread that not all the knights had been captured. Some had fled across the sea, carrying with them their most sacred treasures, not gold or silver, but scrolls, maps, and relics from the Temple of Solomon. These exiled Templars, according to legend, became the seeds of hidden brotherhoods, preserving the secret doctrine in silence for centuries to come. Certain historical traces seem to support this. Templar ships vanished from La Rochelle the night before the arrests, their cargo and destination unknown. Entire commanderies in Scotland and Portugal were never raided, protected, perhaps, by sympathetic kings who refused to betray them. In those lands, the Templar legacy lived on under new banners. In Portugal, they became the Order of Christ, the same order that would later fund explorers like Henry the Navigator, whose voyages would open the New World. In Scotland, it is said that exiled Templars fought beside Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn, turning the tide of battle with strange banners and unearthly courage. But even in silence, the Church could not erase their mark. The Templars had left their symbols carved into stone, woven into cathedrals, encoded in manuscripts that outlived their persecutors. And in those hidden corners of Europe, in underground chapels, in old Masonic rituals, in the architecture of forgotten abbeys, the essence of their inner doctrine endured. What the Church called heresy may have been the remnants of an ancient science of the soul, a system that bridged the visible and the invisible, faith and reason, heaven and earth. To destroy such knowledge was to dim a light that had burned for centuries. Yet paradoxically, that very act of suppression ensured its survival. Foreknowledge forbidden is knowledge preserved. The fall of the Templars was not merely a tragedy, it was a transformation. Their mission, whatever its true purpose, did not die with Jacques de Molay. It went underground, into the secret veins of Western civilization. The builders, the alchemists, the philosophers of the Renaissance, all drew from a well whose source lay hidden beneath the ashes of the temple. And perhaps this was always part of the plan. Perhaps the Templars, aware of their impending doom, scattered their wisdom like seeds to bloom in future ages when the world was ready to hear again what had once been silenced. Their monuments, their symbols, their cryptic maps and rituals all became whispers in stone, pointing toward a legacy that even fire could not destroy. So when we speak of the end of the Templars, we speak only of their visible form. The true order, the one that sought divine wisdom beyond doctrine, that guarded the hidden light of human consciousness, simply changed its shape, taking refuge in mystery. And if the stories are true, then somewhere, even now, their ancient vow continues, carried by those who still walk the hidden path, sworn to guard the secret mission that began beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple. Centuries have passed since the fires of Paris consumed the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. The ashes of Jacques de Molay have long scattered into the wind, yet his curse and his vow seem to have endured. For though the order was destroyed in name, something of its essence survived. The Templars may have fallen, but the current they awakened continued to flow, unseen, beneath the surface of history, like a hidden flame that refuses to die. Every few generations, that flame flickers into view again. In the architecture of a cathedral, in the seal of secret society, in the compass and square of the Freemasons, and even in the modern pursuit of esoteric truth. Each whisper seems to trace back to the same invisible source, a body of knowledge that speaks of hidden geometry, divine light, and the power of consciousness to shape reality itself. If we look closely, the Templar legacy is everywhere. In the 15th century, Portuguese navigators, heirs to the Templar Order of Christ, launched voyages that would reshape the world. Their ships, bearing red crosses on white sails, sailed into uncharted seas guided by mysterious maps and celestial knowledge said to have come from the East. Some believe those maps were fragments of the Templar archives, the same that had once lain hidden beneath Solomon's Temple. Even the design of the great cathedrals that followed carries their invisible signature. Gothic spires reaching toward heaven are not merely acts of devotion. They're living geometry, resonating with cosmic order. The light that filters through stained glass does not just illuminate, it transforms. Every curve, every proportion, every alignment reflects the same sacred ratios the Templars once studied in Jerusalem. The world may have forgotten their names, but their code of creation remains etched in stone. By the 17th and 18th centuries, that code re-emerged in a new form through the rise of Freemasonry. In its symbols, the all-seeing eye, the twin pillars, the unfinished temple, we find echoes of the same Templar philosophy, that the human being is a builder, shaping his inner world as he shapes the outer. Masonic legends speak of the lost word, a secret of divine origin that grants understanding of the universe. Could this be a survival of the Templar inner doctrine, rephrased for a new age? There are deeper connections still. Some researchers believe that Rosicrucian manifestos of the early 1600s, texts filled with alchemical symbolism and the promise of hidden wisdom, were inspired by secret manuscripts carried westward by fleeing Templars centuries earlier. The Rosicrucians, like the Templars, sought not power, but illumination, the transformation of man into a being of light. Their motto, Ex Deo Nascimer, in Jesu Morimer, Per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus, mirrors the same rebirth initiation that defined Templar rituals of death and resurrection. Across continents and centuries, this hidden current flowed, adapting, transforming, disguising itself in art, science, and philosophy. The Templar vision of divine unity slowly began to reappear under new guises. The great thinkers of the Renaissance, Da Vinci, Bruno, Campanella, all flirted with the same forbidden ideas, that God is geometry, that the universe is alive with intelligence, that man's mind is a mirror of creation. These were the very ideas for which the Templars had once burned. And so the question arises, did their mission ever truly end, or did it merely evolve, finding new guardians in each age? Some modern historians have suggested that the Templar treasure was never gold or jewels, but something far more valuable, knowledge. A manuscript, perhaps, or a set of teachings describing the link between consciousness and the material world. In recent decades, scientists exploring quantum physics have stumbled upon similar paradoxes, realities where observation affects matter, where intention shapes outcome. concepts that mirror ancient Hermetic thought, the same current the Templars once guarded in silence. It's as if the wisdom buried in the Temple of Solomon has begun to re-emerge, clothed now in the language of science rather than scripture. Even in our modern world, in architecture, symbolism, and secret institutions, their influence lingers. Washington, D.C., for example, is filled with Templar and Masonic geometry. The compass, the pentagram, the alignment of monuments to celestial events. The very idea of building a new world echoes the Templar dream, a world where knowledge and spirit coexist in harmony. Whether coincidence or continuity, the pattern is undeniable. But what if the Templars' hidden mission wasn't just about preserving knowledge, but preparing the world for something? There are theories, whispered in the margins of occult history, that the Templars foresaw an age when humanity would awaken once more to the reality of the divine within. They called it the Age of the Phoenix, an era when the old order would burn away and the light of inner wisdom would rise again from the ashes. Their secret symbols, the rose, the cross, the double-headed eagle, all speak of this cycle of death and rebirth, darkness and illumination. Perhaps the Templars knew that truth could not be imposed. It had to be rediscovered, generation after generation, by those willing to question the world's illusions. Perhaps that is why they built their knowledge into stone, into symbols, into the very architecture of civilization itself. They knew that even if their order was destroyed, the message would endure, waiting for those with eyes to see. And here we are, centuries later, still searching for their meaning. The Forbidden Mission may not have been a journey to claim relics or conquer kingdoms, but a spiritual task, to protect the bridge between heaven and earth, between science and spirit, between man and the infinite. When we study their story, we are not merely uncovering a medieval mystery. We are gazing into a mirror, one that reflects our own forgotten potential. The Templars remind us that faith and reason need not be enemies, that the universe is not dead matter, but living consciousness, and that enlightenment is not confined to temples of stone, but lies dormant within each of us. Perhaps this is the true legacy of the Templar mission, not the preservation of secret texts or treasures, but the quiet transmission of an idea, that humanity itself is the temple, that within every human heart burns a spark of the same divine fire they once sought beneath the sands of Jerusalem. And maybe, in this age of confusion and disconnection, the hidden flame they guarded is not lost at all. It is simply waiting within us to be remembered, because the greatest secret the Templars ever held was not buried in vaults or encoded in manuscripts. It was alive. It was consciousness itself. And those centuries have tried to bury it, silence it, and twist its meaning. The flame still flickers in the minds of those who seek truth above fear. The Forbidden Templar Mission was never about conquest. It was a calling, a whisper through time, inviting us to awaken the divine light within and continue the work they began. The mission is not over. It has only changed hands.